5:52 in the morning. You're sitting in your truck in the driveway, engine off, phone brightness turned all the way down so it doesn't wake anyone through the window. 4 accounts. 1 balance. $780,412. Teresa is asleep 11 feet away and has no idea any of this exists. You didn't plan for it to get this big. You planned for $10,000. A cushion. Something so if the truck died or the roof leaked, you wouldn't have to say the word loan out loud to your father-in-law again. That was 9 years ago. You were 29. You'd just gotten licensed, finally billing yourself out at $34 an hour instead of working under someone else's number. Teresa was proud of you. She still is. She just doesn't know what you did with the extra. The first account was small and almost an accident. A high-yield savings account, 4.6% APY, opened on a lunch break with $600 you'd told her was for new work boots. You didn't buy boots that month. You told yourself you'd catch up later. You never did. By month 4, there was $2,300 sitting there. By the end of that first year, $8,150. You remember the exact number because you checked it more than you'd admit to anyone. Standing in the garage, phone low, thumb hovering over the balance like it might disappear if you looked away. You remember the smell of the garage that winter. Cold concrete, motor oil, a space heater that never quite reached the corner where you stood. That's where you did your banking, if you can call checking an app banking. Nobody walks into a garage looking for you. Teresa assumed you were organizing tools. You were organizing something else. There was a night early on where she almost caught you. She came out to ask if you wanted tea, and you locked the phone so fast you dropped it, and she laughed and said you looked like you'd been caught doing something. You laughed too. You said something about a game you didn't want her to see you losing. In a way, that wasn't even a lie. Here's where it gets interesting. Can you guess what the second account was for? Not savings, a brokerage account. You'd read one article about index funds on a slow Tuesday, and it rearranged something in your head. $200 a month, automatic, into a fund that mirrored the S&P 500. 10.5% a year, historically. You didn't tell Teresa because $200 felt like nothing worth explaining, and then it felt like too much to explain after the fact. 3 years in, that account alone had crossed $19,000. You started taking side jobs, a rewire here, a panel upgrade there, cash jobs you didn't route through the business. Not because you were hiding money from the IRS, because you were hiding it from the conversation you knew you'd have to have eventually. The one where she asks how much, and why now, and why not sooner. You got good at the math in your head. A rewire job at $340 cash, minus $60 in materials, was $280 that never touched the joint account. Do that twice a month and it's $560. Do that for a year and it's $6,720 that Teresa has never once seen a receipt for. You weren't stealing from her. You want to be clear about that, even now, even to yourself at 5:52 in the morning. You were just building a room in the house she didn't know had a door. Most people stop here. The ones who don't are the ones who actually change things. You didn't stop. You opened a Roth IRA the year you turned 33. $7,000 a year, the max, funded in silence every January like clockwork. Compare that to a coworker of yours, same trade, same hourly rate, who spent every bonus on a boat he uses 4 times a summer. Same income. Completely different result. By 36, you had $61,000 across the 3 accounts. Teresa still thought the two of you were doing okay, not great. You let her believe it. You let her clip coupons for a family that could have paid cash for a car. That part sat in your chest wrong more nights than you'll admit. Your coworker Douglas used to give you a hard time about driving the same truck for a decade. Douglas leased a new one every 3 years, $760 a month, and financed a boat on top of it at 22% because his card was already maxed. You'd nod along at lunch, say something non-committal, and go back to work knowing your $200 a month habit had already quietly outpaced his entire net worth. Nobody at that job site would have guessed it. You didn't dress like a man with money. You dressed like a man saving for boots he never bought. There was a Tuesday in year 4 when a paper statement came to the house by mistake. The brokerage account, the one that was supposed to be all digital, all invisible. Teresa brought in the mail like she does every day, flipped through it on the kitchen counter, and got 2 envelopes into the stack before she stopped on yours. You watched her turn it over. Your stomach dropped somewhere below the floor. "What's this one?" she asked, holding up an envelope with your name and a logo she didn't recognize. You said it was junk, some investment scam mailer. Everybody gets them now. You took it from her hand a little too fast and folded it into your back pocket before she could read the balance printed on the second page. She shrugged and went back to the rest of the mail. You went out to the garage 10 minutes later and sat with your head against the steering wheel for longer than you'd ever admit. That was the closest anyone came to finding out in 9 years. After that, you switched every account to paperless, checked the mail before she did whenever you could manage it, and told yourself it was the last close call you'd allow. It wasn't the last one. It was just the one you remember most clearly. There was a stretch around year 5 where you almost stopped. The market dropped hard that spring, and you watched the brokerage account lose $11,000 in 6 weeks without flinching outwardly, while inwardly you felt something close to grief. Teresa asked why you'd been quiet. You told her work was slow. Work was not slow. You were just doing math in a language she didn't know you spoke. The 4th account came later, and it's the one you think about most at 5:52 in the morning. A business savings account, technically for the side work, but you stopped depositing the checks into anything Teresa could see on the joint statement. $1,587 one month, $2,940 the next. You told yourself it was temporary. Temporary turned into 6 years. Somewhere in there, your daughter turned 8 and started asking why you didn't do the things other dads did. The family trip to the coast, the new bikes at Christmas. Teresa would get quiet after those questions, a specific kind of quiet you'd learned to read as guilt she was carrying that was never hers to carry. You'd sit with your daughter and explain that money was tight right now, and part of you hated how easily the lie came out, smooth as anything, practiced without ever meaning to practice it. The next one on this list is the one nobody talks about, and it's the most powerful. By the time you turned 40, the 4 accounts together had crossed $145,000, and you still hadn't bought the family a single vacation that cost more than a tank of gas and 2 nights at a relative's place. You could have written a check for 2 weeks in another country without touching the checking account Teresa saw. You wrote a check for a used swing set instead, and let her think you were being frugal because you had to be, not because you'd chosen to be. Somewhere around year 7, your father passed, and there was a funeral to pay for, and for the first time, you almost told her. You sat in the funeral home's small office with a clipboard in front of you and a woman reading off casket prices like a menu, and you almost said, out loud, "I have it. Don't worry about the cost. I have more than enough." The words were right there behind your teeth. You didn't say them. You told Teresa you'd figure it out, withdrew $9,400 in cash over 2 weeks in amounts small enough that no bank would ever flag them, and paid the funeral home like a man who was stretching to make it work. You even asked about a payment plan you didn't need, just to keep the story consistent with the man she thought she married. She thanked you for stretching. She held your hand in the parking lot afterward and told you she didn't know what she'd do without you handling things the way you always do. That's the part that still catches in your throat some nights. Not the money. The gratitude for a struggle that was never real. The math, if you want it plainly, broken out one account at a time. The HYSA sits at $214,300 now, still earning 4.4%, built almost entirely from money you told her was for boots, tools, and materials you never bought. The brokerage account, after 9 years of compounding at roughly 10.5% a year, is worth $298,900. More than double what you actually contributed, the rest built by a market you never had to lift a finger for. The Roth IRA, maxed every single year without exception since you turned 33, holds $187,600, growing tax-free the entire time, untouched, untouchable, exactly the way it was designed to be. The business account, the quiet one, the one funded in cash and small transfers that never crossed the joint statement, carries $79,612. Most of it built one rewire and one panel upgrade at a time. $280 here, $340 there, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Add all four together, and you get the number you already know. The number that woke you up at 5:52 this morning, the same way it's woken you up 100 mornings before. $780,412. That's $780,412. Nobody in your house has ever seen a statement for. Your coworker with the boat is $22,000 in debt on it. Your brother-in-law, the one who makes almost double what you do, has $3,200 in savings and a lease payment that eats a fifth of his check. Nobody asks you how you're doing it, because as far as anyone at the cookout knows, you're the guy who drives the 11-year-old truck and skips vacations. The next one on this list is the one nobody talks about, and it's the most powerful. It's not the number. It's the silence around the number. You've built something most people spend their whole lives chasing, and you've built it so quietly that the person who shares your bed thinks you're still counting quarters. There were moments you almost broke. The night she cried about not being able to redo the kitchen. The Christmas she apologized for not getting the kids more. You sat there with $780,000 in accounts she's never opened, and you said, "Next year? Maybe." You've said "next year, maybe" for 6 years running. You tell yourself it's not about the money. It's about control. About having something that's entirely, only yours, in a life where almost nothing else is. Not your schedule, not your weekends, not even most of your paycheck once the mortgage and the groceries and the 2 car payments take their share. The 4 accounts are a closed door in a house that otherwise has none, a room nobody else has the key to, and some nights that feels less like security and more like the only honest thing you own. You've read somewhere that guilt is supposed to shrink over time, the way a scar fades. Yours hasn't done that. It's just gotten quieter, the same way the money did. Less of a shout now, more of a hum you've learned to live alongside. Compare that to the version of you at 29, sitting in a different truck outside a different apartment, terrified of one bad month. That version of you would not recognize this one. That version wanted safety. This version has safety and something else too. A kind of loneliness that safety was never supposed to come with. You've thought about the reveal 100 different ways. A folder left on the counter with 4 account statements paperclipped together. A quiet Sunday conversation over coffee, no kids in the house, no reason to rush. A financial advisor's office, the 2 of you in matching chairs, someone else doing the explaining so you don't have to find the words yourself. Every version ends the same way in your head, her face doing the math faster than you expect, landing somewhere between relief and something that looks a lot like betrayal. You've run the numbers on what telling her would actually change. Nothing about the house. Nothing about the truck. Maybe the kitchen gets redone. Maybe the kids' college accounts stop being a source of quiet dread at the dinner table. Maybe, for the first time in 9 years, you sleep past 5:52 without your body waking itself up to go check something nobody's asked you to check. But you also know what it would cost. Not the money, the story. 9 years of a marriage where one version of events was true for her and a different version was true for you, running underneath it the whole time like wiring behind a wall nobody thought to look for. She'll ask why. You don't fully know the answer yourself, and that's the part that scares you more than the number does. Maybe next year. Maybe. You've thought that in January. You've thought that in December, standing by a tree with presents under it that costs less than what the brokerage account earned that same week in dividends alone. The 4 accounts keep growing whether you decide anything or not. $780,412 tonight. Something higher by the time you finally decide what any of this was actually for. 5:58 now. The porch light across the street clicks off, the way it does every morning right around this time, like a small clock you've never asked for but have come to rely on anyway. You lock the phone, set it face down on the seat, and sit there another minute. Not because there's anything left to check, but because this truck, this driveway, this exact 6 minutes before sunrise is the only place in your entire life where the number gets to exist out loud. Then you go back inside to a kitchen that already smells like coffee, to a wife who kisses you on the way to the counter and asks if you slept okay, to a life that looks, from every angle anyone else could see it, completely ordinary. $780,412 nobody knows about. A wife who still doesn't know what you're carrying or what it's been costing you, quietly, for 9 years to carry it alone.